This is Marty with Marty's Diesel, and today's video is going to talk about our single tank conversions for the rear tank in an old body style. In this particular case, I have an F26E tank that I've cut away in order to kind of help illustrate what you do with a single tank conversion. Understand that if you're modifying a factory tank, you will not have to worry about the depth change that this tank shows. But this is the only tank that I have cut open at this point. So this is all I have available for this video. So anyway, here is your sending unit. This would be the rear tank, which we call tank number 2 in the old body style. So it's your rear tank, it's the one behind your axle. And we call this would be tank number 2. So our single tank conversions would be 2A. The first one would be where you feed and return out of the factory sending units. We could do a single tank conversion where you just attach our fuel lines directly to this sending unit. And you would be taking a 6x6 version of this and a 5x6 version of this, clicking it on each one of these, okay? And they would run directly to our fuel system and the return. That would be option 2A. You literally just have to make sure that you put our new quick disconnects on, and you want to make sure you replace this umbrella, okay? The umbrella that's in the bottom of this sending unit. Now, option 2B would be you actually remove the umbrella off of this sending unit. You use this fitting that we supply you that's already attached to a hose to become your return line. And it is going to click onto your feed line. It will click onto your feed line, but it becomes your new return line. Then we will sell you a blanking plug that will go on over top of your factory return. So that way you won't get any fuel spilling out of here once you go to fill up. And once you do that, you'll have to install this sump into the bottom of this tank. Now, the bottom of the tank, there is a factory 4-inch depression in there. You're gonna have to modify your skid plate. You're gonna have to cut the bump out off of that. And then you're gonna have to use, in this case, a 3-inch hole saw in order to install the sump in the bottom of the tank. Now, the only other option that we have for the rear tank, and it's actually a cheaper, easier option in my opinion, is instead of drilling and putting a 3-inch hole in the bottom of your tank, you're only gonna be drilling a much smaller hole, in this case a 9/16 in the bottom of that factory depression. That factory depression in there kind of acts just like this sump does, okay? You see how this sump gives you like a 1-inch depression? Well, there's roughly a 3/4 inch depression already built into the bottom of your tank. So that would be option 2C. 2C, you would have just this one line going forward to your fuel pump assembly, just like on our sumps. We block off the return and we just have 1/3/8 line coming forward to our fuel pump assembly. Now, if you're running a dual Bosch kit or dual Walbro kit, this would be a little larger. Or if you were running a Fuel Lab kit, this would also be larger once again. But ultimately, the idea here is that option for tank number 2, which is your rear tank, you would either have option A, which feeds and returns out of your factory sending unit, which means that your umbrella must be present and it must be in good shape. It can't be broken and the screen needs to be there. In the event that you opt to get rid of that and you want to go with a sump or a sump style fitting, you get rid of the umbrella and you block off the factory return, and then you use the factory feed as your new return. This requires a very small hole to be drilled in the bottom of your tank. This requires a very large hole to be drilled in the bottom of your tank. And give me 1 second, I'll actually take this out and I will flip this over for you so you guys can see what I'm talking about on the bottom of this tank. So, here's your factory depression, and here is the sump. You're pretty much going to need to make sure that you drill this hole saw as square in the middle as you can, because you want to make sure that these O-rings land on flat steel, okay? One thing that I don't like about the sump setup is that it requires you to have good, nice, high-quality steel here. Any kind of rust, decay, or anything like that can cause a leak. So it's not a great idea to use this if you've got a really rusty depression here. It's one of the reasons why I heavily rely on this option 2C, where you just drill a single 9/16 hole for a single fuel pump. Typically, it's a little bit bigger, like 3/4 inch for our dual pump setup, so you can run a 1/2 inch line, or it's going to be 7/8 of an inch if you're running a 5/8 line for like a fuel lab. So option 1A is through the sending unit. I said 1A, technically it is through the sending unit, but this is the second tank, so option 2A is through the sending unit. 2B is to use the sump, and then 2C would be to use a sump style fitting. On your front tank, you don't have this option. Your front tank would be tank number 1. Option 1A is through the sending unit. Option 1B would be to use a sump. Very, very commonly, we do use the sump on the front tank though, because you don't have just this small depression here to work with. You have a much bigger area on that tank to work with. So, long story short, when we're using the rear tank, my number one favorite way to do it is to use 2C. If you want to use the sump, you can, but just understand what you've got to have to start with in order to have a leak-free operation. Or we can go through the sending unit. You just have to make sure that your sending unit has the umbrella on the bottom of it and that that umbrella is in good working condition. That's all for today.